Welcome to the new season of Love Thy Number. I am so excited to share stories from people who are loving the gift of their own Enneagram numbers. I'm Danae King. I'm a type 7, and I'm so happy to host this conversation with you.
Good morning, Jeannie. How are you this morning?
I'm good. Always in a rush with kids, always scrambling to get the last minute stuff done, but I'm good. I'm here and excited to be here with you.
I am excited that you're here. For those that are listening on the podcast, this is Jeannie Armbruster, and I'll tell you a little bit about her. For those of you who are watching on YouTube, you get to see her. So good morning. So this is interesting. This is one of those great social media stories, if you ask me. There are plenty that are like, I just want to turn from that one. But this one, you and I met. You posed a question on Facebook about parenting.
I did. Yeah. I was asking people just to share some of their parenting experience and how their type shows up in parenting on a really great Facebook page called Enneagram Openings.
Yes, of which I am also a part. And so I decided to reply to that. I'm not really sure why, except I thought, yes, I've had some interesting parenting experiences. Most of them come from, I had no idea what the Enneagram was when I was parenting my children. So I just shared that. And you reached out to me because you are working on a project. And so why don't you say why you asked that question?
Sure. I have a particular interest in the Enneagram and parenting, both as a parent myself and looking back and trying to process and make sense of my relationship with my parents. I just think that there's so much richness through the Enneagram, of grace and compassion as you look back at your childhood experiences, but also as a parent, I find the Enneagram has been the most incredible resource to help me really understand what I'm up to in my type structure. And then also as I look at my kids and realize how very different they are from me, it gives me an opportunity to explore different possible motivations for how they see the world. And it allows me to show up as a parent that is reaching them in the language and in the just in the landscape that makes sense to them more.
Yes. And I think right now I have grandchildren, so my children are probably like, oh, I'm so glad she didn't know that. So not that I am typing my grandchildren at all. That's not true. We all type the children around in our lives. But one of the things that I have found very interesting and helpful is the stances. Yeah. And I know that I'm in the assertive or aggressive triad, and so are you, as you are a
Enneagram 7, a social 7.
Yes, and that's funny because I am too. A social 7 of all things. We connected. It's like, when are we connected? Yeah. But so you've had experience in stance work and all of those. Of course I've read your bio, which gives you such a well-rounded view of what's going on with our children, and not just to say with limited understanding, oh, well, that one has to be a type.
Right. My teaching partner, Mary Wright, and we run Enneagram Moms on Instagram, and it's very funny. As soon as you say anything about children, people say, oh, I know you're not supposed to type children.
Right.
But I think my daughter is whatever. And as parents, I think we can't help but be interested in our children on that level. And if there's a tool available to help us make sense of them, that's great. So the way we frame it is to look at your child and realize that there's a really good chance that they're very different than you. And then use the information of the Enneagram to try different things. You don't need to lock in a type for your child in order to have access, like you're saying, through stance work. Is your child more assertive? Do they kind of move into the world and try to shape the world around them? Are they more dutiful? Are they looking to you to know what to do all of the time? Or do they withdraw? Is that a child that just needs to pull back and have their own time and space to know what they think, to know what they feel? And if For me as a 7, I'm assertive. So I am all out in front of myself. My energy comes up and out. And my children, one is most likely a dutiful stance and one is a withdrawing stance.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And learning that shifted how I connect with them in a way that has just been so fruitful.
It's really, I like to call the Enneagram and all of this Rosetta Stone work and understanding what that language is. And when you understand, oh, they kind of have a different language than I do, but I want to learn that language. And so you can speak to them in a language that they understand. That's why I love the work that you're doing. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to actually have a great story of how this played out very recently. My oldest son is entering into middle school, and even in COVID, they did an in-person tour of the campus, and just to let the kids know when they do go back to school, kind of what that experience will look like for them. And so I dropped him off, I picked him up, and he got in the car, and he is very withdrawing, very thoughtful, observing everything around him all of the time. And my 7 tendency, the second he got in the car, was to be like, oh, how was it? Tell me everything. Who did you see? What are your teachers like? Where's the classroom? Oh, I'm so excited. This is so great. Right? Like that's my 7 energy of like, this is all future planning. This is my sweet spot. This is like the energy and the juice for me. But knowing who he is, thanks to the Enneagram, he got in the car and I was just kind of quiet. And I said, how was it, bud? And he said, okay. And I said, hey, I know that you really appreciate having some time and space to know what you think about things. Do you want me to ask you about your experience now, or would it be better if I waited until dinner? And then can we have a conversation about it?
Oh, how beautiful.
And he said, I know. And he said, dinner would be so much better for me. And so I said, okay, sure.
Wow.
And then because we talk Enneagram in the house all the time, he said, Mom, I'm really thankful for the Enneagram. And I was like, me too, buddy. I would not have known to do that. And he goes, yeah, I'm really proud of you right now. I thought you would be much more excited.
How old is this one?
He's 11. I'm sorry, 11. He's 11.
Yes.
Oh, I know.
How funny. I'm proud of you.
I'm really proud of you. You're handling this really well, was exactly what he said. So moments like that shifted and created space. And then at dinner, his friend came over for dinner and they both sat there and told us all about what that experience had been like. And if I had tried to push, which I would have, he would have taken it as me being angry and upset that he wasn't sharing. He would have felt totally intruded upon and that he was upsetting to me, or he wasn't being who I needed him to be in that moment if I had been all excited and needing him to tell me all the details. But because of this knowledge of stances and types, I'm able to just take a deep breath and say, okay, what does he need right now? And ultimately, we had a much better conversation than if I had tried to force one in the car immediately.
That is a brilliant story.
Yeah.
That is why I love what you're doing. I think anyone that's with children, and the thing about, like if you're a teacher, no one has to tell a teacher or a parent that, oh, this child reacts this way, this one reacts this way. We know from the moment they, come into the world. Oh, this one
they act different. Like
this
right.
Different. And if you have more than one child, it's obvious. Right. So to put some language and some understanding from the parent's perspective, not to try to, like you say, mold and form something that you assume, but to take that, what you know about yourself, and apply that. I love what you're doing.
And in reality, I would have been excited and trying to get that information because as a child, that's what I would have wanted. I would have wanted someone to engage my experience with me and be excited and interested and wanting to know. And so I'm doing that from a really good space. If I had done the whole excitable thing, it's from my best intention and my desire to connect with my son. That's a beautiful thing. The problem is it would have missed the mark because he's a totally different creature than I am.
And I hope this word gets out to all parents and teachers, just because your relationships, and everything comes down to relationship in anything that I do, our work, my husband and I, we work together on some projects. It doesn't matter what all you know. You can be the most educated, know the Enneagram or any of the other paths of tools that we work with inside out. And at the end of the day, if it doesn't enhance your relationship, then nobody cares. And that's what my husband and I, Doug, we did a presentation for the IEA Georgia chapter. And I made this statement: does anybody really care that you know the Enneagram? Is that what we want, is for them to know the Enneagram? Or do we want them to know that we love them? And I love that that's how what you're doing enhances the relationship. It has nothing to do with all these certifications and books and every classes that we've all gone to. So.
It really is. And I think that the core of it is this ability to have grace for yourself as a parent. I think all parents, unless there's major dysfunction going on, parents desire to connect with their kids. They want to show up in their best self. That's why we all have those moments of interacting with our kids where later we think, why did I do it that way? Why did I get so upset? Did I really need to come out that way? As a 7, I often access the line to 1 when I get stressed. So normally I'm this playful, fun, like jumping on the couch with the kids kind of a mom. And then when I get really stressed and things aren't going the way that I want them to go, then I shoot over and I take from the low side of 1 sometimes. And that looks like a really critical, there's a right way and a wrong way. Things are good or bad. So all of a sudden this mom that was like wearing the cape yesterday and jumping off the couch is like, why are you doing that? We don't jump on furniture. Like this, we are not animals. We need to get ourselves together here. And I see these like little eyes look up at me like, what just happened?
Who's my mom? Who took my mom?
Right. And then after, I'm always like, why did I need to do that? Well, the Enneagram with the lines and arrows gives you access to understanding, oh, that's why I did that. That's why that other part of me showed up that's not normally on board, but man, it showed up and it was really damaging. And then I also think one of the greatest gifts of the Enneagram is not that we're not going to continue to be in our personality type. We're still going to mess up. We're still going to show up in that need for things to be the way that we feel good and okay in the world. But it gives us awareness as to when that happens, and it gives us an opportunity to make repair with our children. It's not about being a perfect parent. It's about being able to go back and say, hey, you guys, I'm really sorry. When I did this earlier, I was really stressed out and I needed things to be a certain way for me to feel okay. It was not okay for me to yell at you when I was in that space. And it creates opportunity for repair, which also teaches your children how to do life in a really healthy way.
Oh, beautifully spoken. One of the things that you and I talked about through the Facebook post that I'll just share is looking back. And I spoke to you and said that I had asked my oldest child, who's now 43, as of Sunday, what was it like to have a 7 mom? And I believe he's a type 3. So we connect on that assertive stance, and I'm not going to go through the whole childhood, but he made the statement, well, when I found out that things were not always great at home, like between you and Dad or whatever, that he said, I was surprised because everything always seemed just great. And I was like, wow, what a heart I felt, to be able to share from that place, which I'm sure was a little hard for him maybe to say at first, but it was for me to be able to go, okay, that while the forward thinking, the positive, find the beauty, not the beauty, but to find the positive in every situation as a 7 is not always healthy. And what a disservice we do to our children to not be able to have that understanding of how we think and why we might be approaching a situation that way. And what you said, to be able to come back and say, here's what I did and why I did it, and I'm sorry, and it was wrong. Then you show, oh, okay, then this is how we approach life. It becomes a part of their thinking that, okay, mom messes up sometimes, and she's honest and forthcoming and apologetic, and that is what happens in real life. Not always rainbows and unicorns.
Absolutely.
I have to tell you quickly, I have 5 grandchildren, and one of them, I guess it's because people have said since she was little, she's only 5, but whoo, she's a little you. And that's one of those things I just like, mini me, don't say that. We're not trying to replicate, duplicate, mini me. But it's like, well, she has a lot of your personality. And so they have this dog that's 12 years old and not well. And I mean, come on, it's 12. But she said the other day, well, when this one dies, we're going to get a new puppy that's going to be playful and will run and play with us. And my heart was just kind of like, oh girl, I understand that I'm going to just not think about the pain that might be attached with this. And she's 5. She hasn't experienced a lot of devastation in her life, although they have lost. They did lose another dog when she was about 3. But that's just one of those things. It's like, okay, don't let the thought of grief be something that I wash over, because that's my propensity as a 7, is to not sit in the grief. And so,
yeah, when you have a child in that situation and you know the Enneagram, and the 7 has this fear of getting stuck in pain and suffering. And so as a result, our mechanism is to reframe things as soon as they come in. As soon as something sad is happening in front of us, before it even gets into our heart or our body, our brain has reframed it to make it something okay. So I'll just get a new dog and I'll be okay. This is my strategy for how I will be okay. And so what little 7s don't know is that you will be okay in the sadness too. And to be able to sit with a little child that's needing to jump over the sad part to feel okay and say, we'll get there, but right now it's okay to be sad about this. And I know as a 7 parent, this shows up for me all the time with my kids, especially before I knew the Enneagram, but it still creeps in all the time. When they are sad or upset or having a hard time, my go-to is, think of all you have to be thankful for. Hey, it'll work out. That's going to be fine. And again, that's me as a mom trying to make it okay for my kid. But the reality is I'm also trying to make it okay for me. I'm not comfortable with those feelings. So I need them to be okay so that I can be okay. And the awareness, again, take the breath, slow down, and say, we can be in this moment together. My kids have both shared, as I've asked them, like, what is it like to have me as a parent? And they're still young, 10 and 11. But they've both talked about when we're sad and you try to make it happy, it's like it's not okay for us to feel what we're feeling. And so then we're alone in it. Oh, that's my biggest fear, to be trapped alone in pain and suffering. And my need to get out of it is actually creating a situation where my kids are now alone in their pain and suffering because I can't handle it.
Oh, that makes
I know.
I
know. Like that's one of those parenting moments where you're like, okay. But now I can be with them, and I can make repair when I don't do it right. When I do try to skip over it, I can catch myself and say, oh, I was just doing that thing, wasn't I? And they'll both be so quick to say, yep, you were doing that thing again. And I was like, okay. How are you feeling? What does that feel like? Where do you feel it in your body? This is all language I've had to learn through the Enneagram because I don't have access to my heart that way. I don't know where I feel it in my body. I don't know what I'm experiencing because I'm up in my head and spinning and I'm 2 days in the future at any given moment. So to slow down and be with myself allows me to slow down and be with them and teach them how to be with their emotions when they come up.
Mm. That is just so powerful. I did that the other day with my grandson, who I was watching him while his mom was getting ready to teach, bless her heart. So their little private school decided to go back. So man, talk about emotions all over the board. Her with her own. And so I'm watching the kids while she's preparing her classroom, and then watching her come home and try to, make these two at ease with what's going on. And so I actually said to the one who, he is more sensitive and he's not in the assertive stance. He really needs that security of knowing what's who's in charge, what's happening. But I found myself using this information and these tools and saying, how does it feel in your heart? Let's write down the pros and cons about going into a new school year. And when he would say, I'm afraid of this. And I said, how does that make you feel right there? And he said, bad. And I said, but what else? What else? What would be another word besides bad? And for me to even dig deeper and realize, oh my gosh, he's afraid of what might happen. That fear just, it helped me to find empathy, which is a hard thing for sevens sometimes, to sit in the empathy. And so the gift is in connecting heart to heart and being able to find that place where I'm lacking, pull that up, don't ignore it, and connect with that child. So I'm learning it's never too late.
Never too late. It's never too late. I actually have a story about my younger son, something similar. When I was in one of the trainings at the narrative school, they teach through panels. So they have individuals of the same type get up and sit and share their experience about what it's like to be their type in the world. And there was a young woman on the panel that was a type 6. And she was talking about how sixes have the worst case scenarios running all the time. They're very phobic sixes, really in touch with their fear. They feel that anxiety and that fear. And she said, the worst thing you can do is tell me not to be afraid when I feel afraid. Mm-hmm. Because then I think you don't see the danger. And now I'm alone in it. And so realizing this, I was just like, oh my gosh, that's like the worst feeling ever, to feel that like something's going to happen and no one's paying attention. This is going to go wrong, right? And so both of my kids at different phases in life have, had the typical thing of being afraid at night. You go into their room, and my go-to has always been what my parents did, what most parents do. There's nothing to be afraid of, right? There's nothing to be afraid of. You're safe. We're here. Your dad's here. I'm here. The dogs will bark if anything happens. Like all of this stuff, right? Yep. But realizing that the message is there's nothing to be afraid of. Well, my younger son has a lot of that like worst case scenario and trying to figure out what could happen stuff going on. So knowing what the 6 woman said just offered me an option of what I could offer him that was different than what I naturally would go to. So the next time it happened, I went in and I said, hey, bud, so you're feeling afraid? Yeah. And instead of there's nothing to be afraid of, I said, what does that feel like?
Mm. Oh,
how do you feel afraid? He wasn't able to articulate what he was afraid of. He just knew that he felt bad in his body. And so we talked about where does he feel it in his body. And Marianne Gilbert is this incredible somatic expert that works with the Enneagram. And in the trainings at the narrative tradition, she taught us this technique of finding a space in your body that does not agree with that feeling. So if you're feeling anxious in your body, what part of your body doesn't feel anxious? And so I asked him that, where do you not feel afraid? Like, scan your whole body. And even just the act of that gets you present and out of this what could be world and back into your body. So he said he thought about it for a long time, and he was like, my elbow doesn't feel scared.
Oh.
And I was like, oh, buddy, that's so great. Okay, let's go check in with your elbow. Let's spend some time in your elbow. What does your elbow feel like? And he said, what's that feeling that you get like when you're so happy you can't stop laughing? And I was like, elated? And he's like, my elbow feels elated.
Oh my gosh.
He's laying there. And so I said, okay, well, let's spend some time there. And then let's just go back and check in with the areas that felt scared. Let's go back over and check in with your heart, check in with your tummy. Are you still feeling it? Has it relaxed at all? Mm-hmm. And we could go back and forth between his elbow and his heart and his stomach. And just in being present, being with it, it relaxes. It stops constricting and creating all that energy. And he was able to just kind of let go of the fear. And so it's a joke in our family about, go to your elbow, dude, go to your elbow. Like,
oh, wow. Isn't it beautiful to have that?
To have these tools.
Right. A tool. That's it. Yes.
Because as parents, we're thrown into all of these situations where we have to figure out what our kid needs, what we have energy to provide, what our resources are. And so to have these tools available to us that we can show up in a more essential way for our kids, and model for them just healthy life habits, that ability to stay with your body when you feel afraid is going to serve him really well in life if he can learn that as a child.
I think this is just such important work. And you, your partner is Mary, your teaching partner.
And
Mary. Right now, what are y'all working on?
Yeah. So right now, one of the things that we're doing, and it's how you and I connected, is we're really trying to gather a lot of information from parents that are familiar with the Enneagram. So we're doing a lot of interviews with different individuals, asking, what are the strengths of how your type shows up in parenting? What are the struggles of your type in parenting? And through that, we're just gathering a lot of information, and we're working those into workshops that we're teaching. And, we would love to do some small groups around that and teach parenting groups where people can show up and interact together and learn just more about who they are. But again, like I was able to glean from that 6 on that panel, as we talk to each other, we gather tools that will help our children that are possibly very different than us.
That's why I love listening to other people, other podcasts, and hearing the other types, because I found out that not all people think like I do. I know. So to hear that and to put that in my data bank, my file cabinet, whatever it is, this is my growth, is to get out of the thinking that this is the way all people think, which of course you learned that earlier in life. And I was surprised when I was younger, even as a child, to think, why would you think that way? Or why wouldn't you like me when this girl didn't like me when I was like in the 7th grade? I was like, what's not to like? Everybody likes a 7, which I had no. So, yeah. And so this is a journey that does not end.
It doesn't.
We and what I love for me is, it's not, when I said it's not too late, just because I'm not raising my children in my house doesn't mean that the relationship is ever changing, ever evolving. And especially, when people say, oh, well, when the kids get out of the house and they're on their own, well, they're just starting a brand new life. And so to be able to navigate the different stages of their development, not as a control, not as somebody who's even trying to instruct them from a parental standpoint anymore, but to be able to build a relationship, knowing that their journey is on a continual path, as is mine. And I think the gift one of the gifts that we give our children is to be honest and say, I'm still trying to figure it out. I'm still learning. And again, not parenting, but the relationship with adult children is every bit as growing as it is when you have them in the house. And that need to be able to speak to them in a place of understanding and empathy, I'll keep saying, for me. And then as you have grandchildren, I do believe it takes a village. That's an old saying, but grandmoms are very pivotal in the grandchild's life. Can be.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. If you are doing your own work and have awareness. And I also think that as I'm talking about being able to go back and make repairs with your children, it's never too late to go back and make repairs. My mom and I had a really strained relationship. She was a type 6 and I was a type 7. And so my need to like go out and be in the world and try everything and do everything was in dire contrast to her need to make sure everyone stays safe and we know what we're doing and we know what the plan is and right. So it was a difficult relationship. And through the gift of the Enneagram, being able to go back and understand that it wasn't that she didn't like me, she was terrified for me. And as a result, I felt disconnected, right? But as an adult, we had a moment where she had come to stay with us with the grandkids, and she came up to me in the laundry room one day and she just said, I don't know why I've never told you. And she shared things that my heart has needed to hear for 44 years, and in that there was a repair that was made. And she had Alzheimer's and she just passed away last year. And that moment brought so much healing and so much understanding to my childhood, to my young adulthood. It released something in me that so desperately needed to hear what she had to say. So no matter where you are at in your life, the Enneagram can, as a parent, can give you tools to go back and make repairs for the things that where you were just in your personality and you were just doing what you had to do to feel good and okay, but it caused rupture in your relationship with your child in some way. We all do it. I do it every day still. There's still those moments where I am entranced with my personality. And I don't offer my essential self to my kids, but I am able to offer my essential self to my kids in moments. And so they know that of me. And then we make it better when I am off and in my idea that I need it to be this way to be good and okay. When I'm not open to what is present, I can go back and speak honestly. I can go back and just speak honestly with them and engage them in a conversation about how could we do that better next time? And if you ever want input, ask your kids.
Yes.
Say, I don't handle this situation well. What do I need to do? How can I be in this moment in a way that would help us resolve this? It still needs to be resolved. We still need to deal with the thing. Mm-hmm. How can I do that in a way that makes sense to you? Your kids will offer you solutions.
Oh, yes, they will. That's why to be aware of what my fear is of, oh boy, this is not going to be a pleasant conversation. I'm already afraid before we've ever had the conversation. So that energy of my fear is just going to be, the dominant presence in the room. So one of the things you have mentioned a couple of times is that being present. And I had a teacher one time, and she would say, well, really the answer is just to be present. Well, I would be like, well, that can't just be the answer. That can't be the answer for everything. Be present, be present. And it was very frustrating to me until I realized, oh, well, of course that's not a comfortable answer for you because you're anywhere but in the present. I am going to the solution or running from the fear of the conversation. That's going to be hard. To sit there, ask your kids, be willing to be with that moment and that energy, it is the healing of this. It is the healing tool if we'll let it be.
Yeah.
So I am, and we're going to have to wrap it up. Oh, I could just sit and talk to you all day because I love this. I love this conversation, and your spirit is just so beautiful. And and you're in Pennsylvania. So
I'm in Pennsylvania. I'm just outside of Philadelphia. Do we have like 3 minutes? I can run through like one common hang up of each type for people that are listening, just so that as parents, if we've got time, I can do that.
Oh, absolutely. I just wanted to give us like a 5-minute warning.
I know us sevens, we can go all day long.
That's what I'm saying. I could. Yes, absolutely.
And I'll just share one area that, as I've been doing these interviews, that has come up for each type on a consistent basis. For type 1s, the perfectionist, there's that need for your kids to behave in a certain way so that everybody can know that you're doing it right, that you know the right way. And my teaching partner, Mary, talks about when her kids were little, they would go into a donut shop and, her kids would press their faces up against the glass and look at the donuts. And her one tendency was to say, don't touch the glass. Don't put fingerprints on that. Do you know how hard somebody worked to get that glass clean? Like, don't do that. So it was a one, catching yourself in the moment and allowing kids just to be kids every once in a while. For type 2, one thing that's come up in interviews is 2s often don't say directly what they need, and it comes out as resentment. And one of the 2s I was interviewing, she said, when I had a little baby and I was so tired, and my husband would come home and I'd be holding this baby and I would think, doesn't he see me? Doesn't he know I've been home all day with this baby? Why isn't he offering to help? So 2s can get caught up in that. Doesn't anybody see how hard this is for me? Mm-hmm. And when you catch yourself in that moment, to be able to pause and say, hey, I need help. Can somebody hold the baby so that I can take a break? Give yourself permission to have a need and allow other people to show up to help you meet that need. For type 3s, they can get so focused on a career path or what their next goal is, that they just keep moving forward. And I had a really close friend of mine who's a 3 explain, when I've got all of these deadlines at work and all of this expectation, and my drive to succeed is how I feel okay in the world. To fail at a job is just like an unbearable thought for me. So it's easier for me to set my kids aside than it is for me to set my work aside. So for 3s, carving out that time where you are totally focused on your child for just 20 minutes a day, where your phone is not on, where you realize everything else outside in the world can just wait, and give your child full contact, full attention, hold them, engage with them completely with outside distractions. Type 4s often end up sharing that because they experience the world in such emotional ways, and they have this way of coming back inside of themselves and relating everything to their experience. Oftentimes when their child is going through something, 4s can get so swept up in a memory of how they felt in a similar situation, and then they put that on their kids, assuming that their kid is feeling that way. So to be able as a 4 to pause and ask, what are you feeling? Are you okay? Oh, you are okay with it. Are you sure you're okay with it? And even if the 4 wasn't okay with it when they were a child, create space to allow your child to be okay if they are in that same situation. Type 5 is, my husband's a type 5, an observer, and he talks about how oftentimes he can just be sitting there watching our kids and be so in love with them and think great, amazing things, and it doesn't occur to him to say them out loud. So for the 5, as you're in the moment, you can pause and realize, wow, I just thought my child's really amazing at this. Say it out loud. Be spontaneous and take that risk to share your emotions in the moment. And it just creates a really deep connection with kids when you're able to catch them in the moment and share it. And 5s tend to, think about it and then come back, but just do it in the moment every once in a while. For 6s, their mind is so contrarian in a way that allows them to feel like they can prepare and be safe. So as soon as you say something, the opposite often tends to pop into the 6's head. And so what that can look like, a 6 shared, her daughter got an offer for a babysitting job, and her daughter was really excited. I got this offer for this babysitting job. And her thing was, how many hours? When are you going to do that? How is that going to work? Are you going to be sad about what you have to give up? And by the time she finished her list of 18 questions, her daughter said, never mind, I'm just not going to do it. So for the 6, if you can pause and before you ask the questions, say something positive, say what you like about it. Even just one thing that says, wow, that's a great opportunity. There's some things I need to think about in order to feel good about it, but I love that you got that offer. And then you can begin your questions. But that little pause and offering support before you ask the questions. Now, in your heart, those questions are all in support of the idea. Right. But the child often takes it as you being against them in those things. 7s, we've talked a lot about different things. It's slowing down and being willing to be in the sad emotions and the hard emotions and not needing to rush through it or bust out the ice cream or, make it all better. Yep. 8s talk about that quick and easy access to anger shows up with their kids all the time. All of us find we're angry when we're dealing with our kids and they do something, but for 8s, it's so quick to come out. There's no pause for the 8. As soon as they feel it, it comes out. And for them, it's done afterwards. But in the meantime, this child has just experienced loud, big anger. So if the 8 can pause and calmly state their thing rather than erupting, it makes a huge difference for the child. And then for 9s feel like their presence doesn't matter. And so oftentimes they spend a lot of time saying, oh, whatever you want, we can do whatever you want. I can just drive you and go and do. And I've had 9s that had, I actually interviewed one man who's a 9 and his dad was a 9. And he talked about how he never felt like he knew his dad because his dad never held his space. He never said who he was in life. And he regretted that his dad didn't just show up and say what he wanted sometimes so that he could know his dad better. And so that is his journey as a 9, is to start showing up more with his kids so his kids actually feel connected and know who he is. So for the 9s, when that tendency to just merge into whatever's happening in the agenda of the family, every once in a while, take a pause and just say, nope, I want to do this. Would anyone like to join me in what I'm doing? And your kids will be thrilled to know that part of who you are.
That is, wow.
Rundown.
Of course, I'm thinking of this person and that person, and yes, and I know each of one of the types, and it's just, I found that you said, which of course I'm sure you're well aware of, for every type is to pause.
There's a pause.
It's the reactive.
The patterns of our type. We've been doing it since childhood. Of course, that's what shows up naturally.
And to pause, that power in the pause. There's some famous quote, but I don't remember it. The power is in that pause for all of us.
It allows us to choose something as opposed to just being in reaction mode. We can choose how we show up in a moment.
Isn't that just the most enlightening thing, is to realize we can choose? We are not in bondage to our mind, to our patterns. We can choose. And that's a great gift and a great thing just to have in our hearts when we are with our children. That's what we're talking about right now, with anybody, our spouses, anybody that we're in relationship with. Thank you so much for that wealth of information and sharing from your heart. I want to ask one question that I didn't prepare to tell you, but I'm from the South.
I love it.
Fixing to do this. I was on the phone one time. This is a side story. My husband and I had gone on vacation and we were in Hawaii. And this was, 20 something years ago, and we didn't have cell phones. So I was actually on a payphone calling home just to let them know that we had landed and everything was safe. And I said, well, I'm fixing to go, check in or whatever. And I hung up from the payphone, and the lady in the payphone next to me, she said, "You're from the South, aren't you?" I was like, what am I wearing? Well, I don't have on a cowboy hat. I actually think she said, "You're from Texas." That's what it was. Because I was like, I don't have on a cowboy hat. And she said, "Fixin'." So anyway, excuse that. I am about to ask you a question, because I'm about to do a series of podcasts for each type to ask them what have they noticed during COVID, during this quarantine, that might have been different, something that you learned about you as your type, that is like, whoa, this is different than how I usually am. Do you have anything? And again, this is off the cuff.
Yeah, sure. I do definitely find that I, as a 7, I used to be stir crazy all the time. The inability just to stay and be and not plan and not have people over. As a social 7, that's my big thing. Let's have a dinner party. Let's have 15 people over tonight. We can throw it together. It'll be great. You know? And so to have lost that has felt, it has felt like a big loss, but I've really been, maybe in a healthy way, maybe in an unhealthy way, leaning into my 5, where I can just kind of be in a cave and read and go in the rabbit holes and all of that. Now, I've also learned, though, that you can do that in a not so healthy way, where it's like a distancing and a disconnection. And I feel some of that too, where I actually have avoided some opportunities to engage. So I'm still kind of working with that in myself and trying to figure out what is that? What's going on there? But I have overall been really content in terms of just being at home during the last several months.
That is exactly what I felt and realized. I just wanted some validation. Not really. I was very curious. You might have experienced something else, but that is exactly what has happened. And I've done the same thing. It's like, I haven't even felt that urge to go out and be with somebody right now. I'm just kind of enjoying being still, which is new. Yeah. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
I think that, again, a phrase that I've said before, the problem can become the solution. Yeah. And so, boy, haven't we all been forced to sit with who we are and either come to terms with it or discover something new and let that become a solution to this problem that we are all experiencing right now. Jeannie, thank you so much. Jeannie's website is yourtruestyou.com, your truest, TRUEST. I'm going to put all that in the show notes. I'll put her Instagram. Please follow her on Instagram.
Mary and I, we've taken a break over the summer. Mary had a big move out of state, and then just with the boys being home, we kind of took a break over the summer, but we're going to start hitting the Instagram again. And we really do try to provide deeper content beyond just the fun stuff that you find on Instagram. We really want to resource parents through our Instagram at Enneagram Moms.
Got it. Yep. I think we're all kind of, that's why my podcast took a time out. It's like, wait a minute, I don't know what we're doing right now. But yes, go ahead and be prepared. Follow you on Instagram, and I'll put all your contact information in the show notes. Again, thank you. I'm so glad we connected. If somebody asks a question on Facebook and you think it's a way to connect with somebody in a good way, don't be afraid to reach out. I'm so glad I had that opportunity to meet you.
Thanks.
Okay. And if you're ever south, come on down. Thank you, Jeannie. Have a great day.